The Moreton Bay Courier, as separation drew nearer, it increased its publication frequency to bi-weekly at the beginning of 1858 to tri-weekly a few days before separation, and then about 18 months later it became a daily, and that's when it changed its name to The Courier. And then a few years later, 3 years later, it changed its name to the Brisbane Courier, which title persisted until the merger in 1933 with the Daily Mail, and the product became the Courier Mail. We had the Great Depression, and both the Courier and the Daily Mail were finding it much harder to survive, and so Keith Murdoch and John Wren came to a deal. On 28th of August 1933, the Courier Mail first appeared. When Sir Keith Murdoch died, the Courier Mail was part of his estate, but there was sufficient debt within the estate to encourage the executors to advise Lady Murdoch to offload the Courier Mail. "35 years later, when Rupert Murdoch News Limited came into control of the Courier Mail, Rupert was really glad to have the Courier Mail back as part of his stable. He felt that his mother had been wrongly advised about getting rid of the Courier Mail.
I think the great outstanding example in contemporary history is the Courier Mail's coverage of the events leading up to the Fitzgerald inquiry.
Bob Gordon was Chief of Staff and Phil Dickey was the reporter who did it. Phil, chapter and verse, went through everything and who was up to what. He was absolutely fearless, Phil.
Lord knows how many times I gave him lectures and Greg gave him lectures about not putting his life at risk, but he certainly did on many occasions.
While I was at the Courier Mail from 58 to the early 2000s, Phil Dickey's articles that led to the Fitzgerald inquiry were possibly the most significant series written.
And they were uncontroversial principles, you know, lower government, less intervention, support free enterprise. And that's pretty well what mainstream Australians believe. Now, I wouldn't get regular calls from Rupert on these things at all. In fact, through most of my time, I'd see him a couple of times a year.
Murdoch was not someone who interfered, he was supportive, but you knew what he expected his editors to do.
There is a myth that Rupert rings up his editors every day and tells them what to do. That is just not true. He agrees that you are the expert in that local situation, and he provides you with all the armoury you need to run that business, and, you know, heaven help you if you don't run it right.
The Courier Mail basically reported Queensland and helped it through some fairly dangerous times, but it also created this kind of Queensland character.
It is the only consistent chronicler of Queensland's history through good times and bad, and I think people recognise that, and when there is a big issue, I don't think the Courier Mail at its best can be outdone by anything or any other media organisation.
An important characteristic of the Courier Mail through all its ownership has been an understanding of just how important local issues are to Queenslanders. I think one important thing that's happened in the past 10 years is the paper went from being broadsheet to being the compact size. Rupert, when he came to town, and he said, "OK, I know why we're here. I don't know why it's taken you blokes 20 years to come to this." And that was the end of it. He understood innately that people wanted convenience.
It's literally a 24-hour business these days. So it's a constant, evolution of the news throughout the day. But, we've got those 4 versions of our products: the newspaper, the mobile site, our tablet versions, which is an app, and of course people reading the online website on their computer. So we've got an entirely new audience out there in huge numbers, for instance, who are reading our content on a mobile phone. Younger audiences are consuming our content in that way. So the future of the newspaper, I think, is still very strong.
The paper always has attempted to be the watchdog to make sure that it monitors what the government's doing.
I think the most alarming thing that's happened in democracy in the last 30 years has been the growth of spin doctors.
A couple of years back, when someone worked out that there were more spin doctors, that's press secretaries in the Queensland government, than there were journalists at the Courier Mail. Then someone updated that again later and said there are now more journalists in the Queensland government than there are journalists at the Courier Mail and the ABC put together.
How many companies have been around since 1846? It's always been a very vibrant part in the life of Queensland. It's brought information and knowledge to people all over Queensland. It has made a big difference to our society through its investigations.
I think the Courier Mail is central to everyday life in Queensland. There's not one bit of life that can happen in Queensland without the Courier Mail being present in some way, whether it's in print or whether it's through its digital properties now.
It would be hard to argue with the fact that the Courier Mail and the Sunday Mail are just immersed and totally part of the Queensland culture.
Oh, there's no question the Courier Mail is the iconic newspaper in Queensland. Whether it's the length of history, the role it's played over the years, whether it's exposing the Fitzgerald-era corruption, day-to-day changes. There's no other media organisation that comes close to the Courier Mail's influence in Queensland. This paper is part of the Queensland DNA.